Dinner was already halfway over when Zach finally decided to look at me. We were sitting at my wife's parents' table. The kind of table that had seen decades of bland holidays and fake forgiveness. Generational denial passed around with the salt. Michelle's father was already 3 whiskeys in. Her mother was trying too hard to smile. Her sister was texting between bites. Everyone was pretending this was a celebration. It wasn't. It was a staged farewell. And I was the one being buried. Zach raised his glass in mock ceremony and turned toward me with that smirk he'd worn since the day he moved back into our house. The best wedding gift you could give us is to disappear from this family. Forever. He didn't blink. He didn't even soften the tone with humor. And then he laughed. Not because it was funny, but because he knew what he was doing. Loud enough for the whole table to hear. Loud enough for it to echo in that fake happy dining room. I didn't laugh back. I looked around the table. No one looked shocked. No one asked him to stop. Not even Michelle. Her sister raised her eyebrows, her mouth already curling around the next jab. We won't even notice he's gone. She chuckled as if she were on a sitcom. As if I were just some character they could write out before the season finale. I kept my eyes on Michelle. Waiting. She didn't flinch. She didn't look at me. She just nodded. Small, sure. It's time you let us move on. That was it. No hesitation. No pause. No. Zach, that was cruel. Just agreement. Quiet. Final. In that moment, I realized I wasn't standing at a dinner table. I was standing at a grave. My own. I didn't say a word. Not because I didn't have words, but because I knew, suddenly, devastatingly, that they would bounce off the walls and hit the floor like broken glass. No one would pick them up. So I stood. I reached for my coat. Gray wool, stiff with winter. And I walked out. No one followed. Outside, the streets of New Haven were still. The wind was sharp and aimless, chasing old leaves and wrappers across the pavement like lost thoughts. A train howled somewhere in the distance. A dog barked twice and stopped. The cold found its way into my collar and stayed there. I didn't have a destination. I just needed to leave the warmth of that house. The warmth that wasn't mine. That maybe had never been. 3 months earlier, Zach had come back. Jobless. Bitter. Carrying nothing but a garbage bag of wrinkled clothes and a history of burning bridges. Fired again. Toxic work environment, he said. They were intimidated by me. I didn't ask what really happened. Michelle had answered the door that night with open arms. She called it temporary. But we both knew that word meant nothing. It was the 3rd temporary in 2 years. Each one longer than the last. He walked through our front door like a tenant. Not a guest. Didn't say thank you. Didn't shake my hand. Just looked around like a landlord inspecting property he forgot he owned. The first week he played nice. Dishes got washed. Rent was offered. I almost let myself believe he'd grown. By the 2nd week, the dishes stayed in the sink. The guest room turned into a black hole of takeout boxes and unwashed socks. Volume up late. Doors left open. One morning, I found him using my razor. I said nothing. The silence was easier than the fight. Michelle, of course, bent over backward. She justified. She soothed. She made him excuses like bedtime stories. He just needs space. He's finding his footing. He's been through a lot. She said those things like I hadn't been through anything. Like I hadn't held this house up through every storm while her son wandered through life like consequences were optional. I kept working. Picked up extra shifts. Weekends. Late hours. Kept our bills paid while Zach scrolled job boards he never applied to. And when I did finally speak up, when I dared to ask him to lower the volume or stop eating leftovers labeled with my name, he stared at me like I'd crossed a sacred line. Michelle didn't back me. She gave me that same tired look, the one that said, "Don't make this worse," like I was the storm, like I was the problem for asking for boundaries. The house became a minefield. His moods were mercury. Her silences were worse. It didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter how much I paid, how often I fixed, how long I stayed. Zach was the center. Michelle was his orbit. And I was the stray moon they kept forgetting to acknowledge. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't announce itself. It just grows, quietly, like mold under paint. You live in the same rooms, breathe the same air, and yet somehow you're always on the outside of the picture frame. By the time the wedding was announced, Zach and his girlfriend, some barista he'd known for 6 months, Michelle, was already gushing, already planning the event like it was a coronation. I said nothing when she picked the venue, said nothing when she showed me the menu, said nothing when the deposits started coming out of my account. $3,000 for floral arrangements, $9,500 for the venue, $4,200 for the photographer, $1,800 for a live band Zach had seen once in Providence. I watched the balance dip lower, and I worked more. Michelle never asked. She assumed. The same way she assumed I'd pay the bills when she took time off after her surgery. The same way she assumed I'd help cover her sister's mortgage for 2 months when she fell on hard times. The same way she assumed love was a kind of debit card with no overdraft notice. I told myself it was fine, that one day the gratitude would come, that Zach would shake my hand and mean it, that Michelle would look at me the way she used to. But that day never came. Instead, I got a dinner where the joke was me, where the punchline was my disappearance, and where the woman I loved agreed it was time I left. So I walked into the dark, into the silence, and for the first time in years, I let the cold settle in my bones. Because it was honest. It didn't pretend to love me while using me. It didn't nod in agreement when someone laughed at me. It just stung. And that at least made sense. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of anger. Not out of heartbreak. I didn't toss or turn. Didn't curse into the dark or clutch at the pillow like it owed me answers. I just lay there in the quiet of a rented room, some roadside motel outside of Fair Haven, and let the weight of it settle. It was strange. How light it felt. Not the pain, I won't lie, there was pain, but the clarity. It was like realizing a fire you'd been feeding for years had already burned out. You're not angry at the ashes. You just stop throwing logs into the pit. I opened my laptop around 2 a.m. The motel Wi-Fi was weak, but strong enough. The blue light washed over the desk, over my fingers, over the ghost of a man who'd spent the last decade pretending silence was strength. I opened my banking app, logged in, clicked through the accounts. Wedding, $147,000 already paid or pending. There it was, in black and white. They hadn't thanked me, not once. Not when I wired the deposit for the yacht. Not when I booked the honeymoon suite in Santorini. Not when I added Michelle's sister and her husband to the guest list because it would mean so much to them. It wasn't even resentment. That would have implied they saw me. It was entitlement. The quiet kind. The kind that sits next to you at breakfast and says, "Don't forget, we need another $500 for the dress alterations." The kind that hands you a receipt, not a conversation. They assumed I would pay. That was the real insult. And the truth is, they were right until now. I stared at the screen and let the rage settle into discipline. First, the banquet hall. Cancelled. The contract had a penalty clause. They'd keep 20%. Fine. Let them chew on that. Click. Email sent. Next, the photographer. They'd hired a high-end team out of Boston. $7,200 with the add-ons. I forwarded the cancellation notice. Click. The yacht, oh, the yacht. Zach's idea. Some fantasy from a wedding blog. Said it would set the tone. I canceled it without blinking. Click. Refund request submitted. The honeymoon suite. Non-refundable. Still canceled it. And then the florist. The band. The string quartet. The custom neon sign that said, Z&M forever. Each one dropped. One after the other. Like weights off my back. By 3:30 a.m. the inbox was full of confirmations. By 4, my bank balance had stopped bleeding. And Michelle? She was still asleep. Probably dreaming of centerpieces. I could have texted, called, left a dramatic voicemail. But I didn't want theater. I wanted silence. So I went home. Let myself in with my own key one last time. The kitchen was dark. Quiet. The house smelled like cinnamon and dust and betrayal. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the wind brushing against the windows. And there it was, the envelope, sitting on the table, like a dare. Inside, confirmation of the $147,000 wire transfer. Final payment for the wedding banquet. No note, no signature, just cold numbers. She had signed for it with my account. Michelle wasn't just complicit. She was comfortable. I stood there for a long time, staring at that envelope. The room felt like a coffin. The walls too close, the air too thin. And then, like I'd rehearsed it, I opened my laptop again. One last task. I listed the house. Photos were already on file from the last insurance assessment. The agent owed me a favor. Within 20 minutes, it was live. A tidy 3-bedroom colonial in Westville. Lovingly maintained, freshly renovated kitchen. Price to move. They'd find out soon enough. By sunrise, I had packed my things. Not all of them, just the essentials. Everything else could stay. Let them figure out what belonged to whom. Let them divvy up the furniture like they'd already divided the loyalty. I left one more envelope on the table. Not angry, not spiteful, just final. It held 2 things. A printed spreadsheet. Every wedding expense I'd covered. Dates, amounts, cancellations, refunds. A handwritten note. Now you're truly independent. No signature. They didn't need one. I walked out, locked the door behind me, took nothing but my bag and my name. The streets were still wet from last night's rain. The world felt emptied of judgment. Just birdsong and pavement and the soft knowledge that I had finally drawn a line. At 7:12 a.m., I dropped the house keys in the mailbox. At 7:13, I blocked Michelle's number. At 7:16, I got the first call. Unfamiliar number. Probably Zach. I didn't answer. At 7:20, another one. Michelle. Voicemail. Again at 7:32. 7:41. 7:58. No texts. Just missed calls. Like they thought urgency could stand in for remorse. Zach finally broke the silence with a message. You ruined our day. No why. No how could you. Just accusation. I stared at it for a while. Let the venom sink in. And then I deleted it. That evening, I sat alone on the balcony of a short-term rental downtown. 2nd floor. Cheap rug. Coffee machine that rattled like it had survived a war. And peace. Real peace. Not the peace you pretend to feel while being swallowed. Not the kind you smile through at dinner while someone laughs at your expense. But the kind that comes when you realize you're no longer holding up people who are kicking you. I watched the city move beneath me. Horns. Lights. A couple arguing half a block away. A kid riding a bike too fast down a hill. Life continuing without me. And I let it. I made a cup of coffee. No cream. No sugar. Just black and honest. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I didn't regret. I just sat there in the dark. Letting go. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone a single goddamn thing. They opened the envelope after I was gone. I imagine it was Michelle who noticed it first. Set neatly on the kitchen table between the fruit bowl and the wedding binder she decorated with gold calligraphy. Maybe she thought it was a note of apology. A confession. A chance to salvage what she thought still belonged to her. But when she opened it, there was no apology waiting inside. Just a ledger. Itemized. Unsentimental. Precise. Every vendor cancellation. Every forfeited deposit. Every penny refunded to my account. And the note. Now you're truly independent. That was the moment the house changed. The moment silence turned into panic. Michelle called first. Once. Twice. By the 5th call, her voice had cracked into a raw, choked whisper on the voicemail. I don't understand what you're doing. This isn't like you. Please call me. That told me everything. She still believed I was the one being irrational. That I'd snap out of it, like a husband waking from a bad dream. That I'd remember my place in the family dynamic, provider, peacekeeper, ghost. She didn't understand. I wasn't having a crisis. I was having a realization. Then came Zach. He didn't ask me why. He didn't ask if I was okay. His message came in cold and fast. You ruined our day. That word echoed louder than the insult. Not his day. Not Michelle's wedding planning. I wasn't part of that hour. Not when they made the decisions. Not when they planned without asking. Not when they laughed across the table at my expense. But now, when the structure collapsed, suddenly I was included in the wreckage. They didn't want me. They wanted the scaffolding I provided. That afternoon, the text shifted tone. Michelle again. We can still fix this. I don't know what you want from me. Just tell me what this is really about. What it was about. It was about waking up. It was about realizing I had spent years building a life with people who loved the results of my presence, but never the presence itself. I didn't respond. Not because I was punishing her. Because there was nothing left to say. That night, I watched the city breathe from my balcony, sipping black coffee, the breeze sliding over my skin like water. For once, no one needed anything from me. There were no bills with someone else's name on them. No thankless favors disguised as duty. No expectations crawling under the skin like rot. I'd lived too long in the economy of quiet sacrifice. Now it was their turn. 2 days later, Michelle drove to my office. She waited in the parking lot. I watched her from behind the blinds, her body tense behind the windshield. She didn't get out. Just sat there, engine running, hoping I'd come out and rescue her from this moment the way I always had. I didn't. Let her sit in it. Let her taste the weight. She didn't call again that night. But Zach did. The text was longer this time. It reeked of panic masked as rage. I don't care what kind of point you think you're making. This is bigger than you. You involved a lot of people. This is childish. You embarrassed us. You hurt Mom. He used the word us again. He used Mom like a weapon. But the truth was already bleeding through the cracks. They didn't miss me. They missed the comfort I paid for. They missed the man who swallowed his pride and his pain and wrote checks without needing to be seen. I let them sit in the silence. Every day, the calls came less frequently. By the end of the week, the voicemail was full. They never said the word sorry. Not once. Monday morning, the wedding venue called. Michelle's name was still on the file, but I was the payee. They needed clarification. Final confirmation that the cancellation was binding. I gave it. The woman on the line asked if I wanted to record a formal withdrawal of financial responsibility. I said yes. Loud and clear. It was strange how good that felt. Not triumphant. Not spiteful. Just clean. Like finally taking your name off a tombstone that was never yours to begin with. The next day, Michelle sent an email. Not a call. Not a text. An email. The subject line was blank. The body read, "We never wanted you to feel this way. I don't know when things started to go wrong, but I wish you'd just talk to me before doing all of this. I'm trying to explain to everyone what happened, and I can't. I don't know what to say. You were always the steady one. I hope you find peace. M." No apology. No accountability. Just confusion. Because in her world, I was the disruption. Not Zach's entitlement. Not her silence. Not the years of being dismissed in my own home. She didn't know what to say. Maybe because saying the truth would mean admitting it had always been there. I didn't reply. By Friday, the wedding was officially off. Zach's fiancée, Emma, had posted something cryptic on Instagram. A photo of a canceled bouquet, captioned, "Everything falls apart eventually. Some people just push." That was the first time I realized she'd never been told the full truth. Maybe Zach blamed me. Maybe Michelle had sugarcoated the rupture. Didn't matter. She'd learn in time. They all would. That weekend, I drove out to the shoreline. Just me, a rented car, and an old playlist I hadn't touched since 2014. The music didn't match the mood, but I let it play anyway. There's something cathartic about distance. About the road unfolding ahead with no obligations pulling at the seams. No one in the passenger seat needing reassurance. No voice in the back seat whispering you should have done more. I parked at a cliffside lookout. Wind tore across the rocks. Salt in the air. The ocean like 1,000 voices all saying let go. I watched the water for hours. Didn't check my phone. Didn't think about the mortgage or the next step. Just watched the tide. Let it do what it does best. Come and go. Come and go. Back home, the mail had started to pile up. One envelope stood out. From Zach. Handwritten. Sloppy. Probably rushed. I opened it. Inside was a printed photo of him and Michelle. One of the old ones. The kind we used to keep on the fridge before everything turned bitter. On the back, just 6 words. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I laughed. Out loud. Because it was the first honest thing he'd said in years. No deflection. No denial. No manipulation. Just grief. But even grief, when it comes too late, doesn't fix the past. They wanted to reset the clock. To pretend the fire hadn't already burned the beams. But I'd already walked out of the house. And I wasn't walking back in. I kept the photo. Not out of sentiment. Out of principle. A reminder that family is more than shared walls and linked bank accounts. That loyalty without respect is exploitation. That love without accountability is just a leash. For years I let them hold the leash. Then I cut it. And now they can walk themselves. A week later we met in court. No hugs. No screaming. No dramatic tears. Just the antiseptic silence of bureaucracy and fluorescent lights. Even justice, I learned, wears a tie and keeps a calendar. Michelle sat 2 seats away, her hands folded in her lap like she was praying. Not to me, to the process. To the hope that the paper trail didn't go as deep as she feared. Zach didn't show. He had texted her that morning. I'm not giving that man the satisfaction. That man. Even now, he couldn't say my name. But the satisfaction wasn't mine. It belonged to the law. The court clerk called our case number. We stood. Walked like strangers to the table. Each step heavy with the ghost of a shared bed. Shared bills. Shared silence. The judge was young. Sharp-eyed. Impatient. He skimmed the file. Looked up. Looks like we're here to resolve financial liability. Primarily regarding wedding expenses. Is that correct? Michelle nodded. I said nothing. Mr. Reynolds, the judge said, finally addressing me. You've provided documentation for every charge? I handed him the folder. Organized. Color-coded. The accountant in me had been preparing this long before the breakdown. The judge flipped through pages. Every deposit. Every wire. Every cancellation. Each date matching perfectly with Michelle's authorization or silence. Then he turned to her. Ma'am, is there any dispute over the numbers provided? Michelle hesitated. That pause spoke louder than any plea she could have rehearsed. I didn't realize how much of it was in his name, she said quietly. He always handled things. The judge nodded once. Neutral. Efficient. He read from the record. Venue, $35,000. Paid by Mr. Reynolds. Cancelled by Mr. Reynolds. Partial refund issued. Photographer, $7,200. Paid in full. Refunded in full. Yacht charter, $15,000. Cancelled within penalty window. Partial refund. Total paid from Mr. Reynolds's personal account, $121,300. Total refunds returned to same. He looked up. Are you seeking reimbursement from Ms. Reynolds? I shook my head. No, just legal clarity. Michelle turned to me then, surprised, like she expected me to twist the knife. But I wasn't there for revenge. I was there to draw a line. The judge scribbled something. Very well. The court acknowledges Mr. Reynolds is the sole financial party responsible and authorized in all contracts and cancellations. No liability remains with Ms. Reynolds. He closed the folder. Final question. Any claims of breach, duress, or contested ownership? No, Michelle whispered. No, I confirmed. The gavel hit the desk like a heartbeat. Case closed. We stood. Walked out. Still strangers. In the hallway, Michelle finally spoke. I didn't think you'd let it go. I already did, I said. She looked down. That old reflex, to smooth things over, to find the middle. But the middle had been gone for months, maybe years. You didn't have to cut everything off like that, she said. We could have figured something out. I nodded slowly. We did. You chose him. I chose peace. And I walked away. She didn't follow. Outside, the air tasted different. Like metal. Like beginning. I got into my car and sat for a long time with the windows down. Let the wind carry away whatever lingered. Her perfume. His laughter. My shame. I wasn't angry anymore. Just awake. Zach texted me that night. Glad it's over. Hope you enjoy being alone. I didn't respond. Because I did enjoy it. Not the loneliness, but the solitude. There's a difference. Loneliness is hunger. Solitude is a fast. And I was cleansing myself. Weeks passed. The house sold. Quicker than expected. The market was hungry. Young couples dreaming of front porches and hardwood floors, and not yet knowing what betrayal sounds like when it closes a door behind you. I didn't take much. A few books, clothes, the coffee maker. Left the rest. Let them split it like vultures if they wanted. I was done picking over bones. The apartment I moved into wasn't impressive. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor. Windows that stuck in the winter. But it was mine. Every nail in the wall. Every dollar on the lease. No footsteps stomping in late. No cold shoulders at dinner. No second-guessing whether I mattered. I kept a chair by the window. Every night, I sat there with black coffee and silence. No TV. No distractions. Just reflection. And here's what I found. I wasn't angry at Zach for what he said at the dinner table. I was angry at myself for believing I still belonged there. That was the real betrayal. The lie I fed myself. I thought sacrifice would earn me respect. That paying bills and fixing leaks and staying silent while they mocked me would eventually lead to gratitude. But some people don't want to see your worth. Because if they did, they'd owe you something. And Zach, Michelle, they preferred the story where I was background. Where I funded their lives from the shadows and accepted scraps in return. So I rewrote the story. And this time I put down the pen before it bled me dry. A year passed. No calls. No birthdays. No invitations. Just silence. Until one day a letter. No return address. Just my name, handwritten on the envelope. Inside a wedding photo. Not the original plan. A courthouse, probably. Michelle in a plain dress. Zach in an ill-fitting suit. Emma beside him, smiling thinly. On the back, someone had written, "He cried when you didn't show up." No name, just the sentence. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it moved me, because it confirmed what I'd already known. They wanted me there not as family, as spectacle, as guilt, as a wallet in a tie. I folded the photo in half and dropped it in the trash. Let the past rot where it belonged. People ask what I'd do differently. And I don't lie, I wouldn't change the giving. I changed the expectation. I thought love was enough. That if I showed up, gave all I had, stayed through the worst, it would balance out. But love without respect is self-destruction. You can give your whole heart to people who won't even hold it with 2 hands. And when it breaks, they'll ask why you made them feel bad. They'll blame you for bleeding. Sometimes I walk past the old neighborhood, see the house with new curtains, a child's bike in the yard, fresh paint. I don't feel jealousy or regret. I feel distance, like watching a film you once acted in, a version of yourself you don't recognize anymore. And I'm okay with that. So here's the final truth. I loved a family that didn't love me back. I gave to people who saw me as a resource, not a man. And when I stopped giving, they called it betrayal. But it wasn't. It was self-respect. Delayed, but not denied. And maybe that's the lesson. That the hardest thing isn't leaving. It's admitting you should have left sooner. So I ask you, was I wrong? Was it cruel to leave that envelope on the table instead of a goodbye? Was it heartless to let them fall, just once, without catching them? Or was it the first time I told the truth with action instead of apology? Tell me, would you have endured it? Or would you have walked out too?